Thank you again for joining us for the July meeting of the High Country Tableau User Group. This is a special meeting for us today. We're going to have a topic related meeting. We're going to talk about data strategy and culture in your organization. So it's good to see that we have some people from higher ed here and some nonprofit people here, so they can take advantage of the two great speakers that we have today. My name is Stephanie Diekman. I'm one of the co-leaders of this user group. My other leader, Jenny, is off sick today, so send good thoughts her way for her healing, that she feels better soon. So I'm going to be hosting. When I pass it off to our panelists, I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A. If you have questions, I recommend going ahead and putting them in the Q&A. And then you can use the chat for just communicating to me directly or to one of the panelists directly. So our two panelists today are Trevor Wilder from Tableau and Larry Blackburn from Datatelligent. And we're going to go ahead and start off with Trevor, and he is going to give us an overview of Tableau Blueprint. So Trevor, I will hand it off to you.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Give me 1 second here to Okay, do you see the PowerPoint, or do you see my notes?
I see the PowerPoint.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for having me present today. Like Stephanie said, my name is Trevor Wilder, and I am a Tableau Customer Success Manager. I'm based outside of Washington, D.C., and I've been with Tableau almost 2 years now. And I work primarily with higher education colleges across the East Coast, including UNC Charlotte and UNC Chapel Hill. And one of the main roles of a customer success manager at Tableau is to help our customers navigate and implement the Tableau Blueprint, which is what I'm excited to talk to you about today. So as you know, at Tableau, we have always been on a single mission, and that is to help people see and understand data. That means more now to us now than ever, because data gives people the ability to deliver innovative ideas to big problems. And people can deliver more meaningful solutions to complex questions. They deliver impactful solutions that drive your organization forward. And we call these people data people. And we believe that really any person at your institution can be a data person, yourself included, of course. Helping everyone in your organization embrace their innate data person gives you a secret weapon for creating success with analytics. Data-driven organizations are able to get a better picture of what's going on, how to make smarter decisions faster, and how to help everyone be aligned and making decisions based off of the data and not their opinions. Data delivers the insights that unlock how to best serve your customers and sell and market to prospective customers. In your situation, of course, this could be alumni funding or, prospective students. But ultimately, data-driven organizations deliver stronger results, such as having 23 times more likeliness to add customers or students or donors, 1.5 times more likely to increase the overall revenue by more than 10%, and are 9 times more likely to retain their internal customers. This is something that is obviously getting more important, and with digital transformation happening faster than ever, your organization needs to be agile and make decisions quickly in order to succeed. Today, becoming data-driven is not really just a matter of competitive advantage, it's a matter of requirement and survival. I think it's one thing that, especially with the pandemic over the last year, we really, of course, have seen an even higher emphasis on data on a day-to-day basis. Well, unfortunately, the truth is most organizations are falling behind. A recent survey by McKinsey showed that less than 10% of organizations are distinguishing themselves as being more data-driven and really trying to be proactive with their decisions based off of data instead of continuously just reacting. That means a lot of organizations are falling behind. So at Tableau, we've been consumed with understanding what makes the difference for those few who are finding success. It's a lot deeper than just simply deploying Tableau Server or Tableau Online or having a copy of Tableau Desktop. It's a lot more past, just the technology. It's a lot more fundamentally about how you're doing things. So that's why we're going to be talking today about building a data culture. We took everything that we had learned over, working with our customers. We interviewed over 1,000 customers, in fact, put it together with our own experience, and we created a blueprint for building data culture. The Tableau Blueprint is a free step-by-step guide to building a data culture at your institution. And this methodology is filled with best practices and real-world advice to help you every step of the way. It addresses key elements of success across people, processes, and technology. So before we move forward, I just want to see how familiar the folks on today's call are with the Tableau Blueprint. Could you just put in the chat box just yes or no if you're familiar with the Blueprint at all? I see some yeses, I see a no. So a little bit of both. Great, thank you. Well, hopefully for those of you that are familiar with the Blueprint, this will be a good refresher. But there is also a new tool related to the Blueprint that I'll be discussing at the end of today's presentation. So whether this is completely new information or it is something that you may be revisiting, I hope you find some value and some ideas about how to apply this at your own institutions. So what we're looking at now is the Tableau Blueprint, and how you work through it really depends on where you are in your journey with analytics and data and where your biggest gaps or problem areas might be. Typically, however, it is something that is worked through in 4 distinct phases. Discover, which is where we're gathering information and perspectives from different sponsors, multiple stakeholders, maybe both input from IT stakeholders versus more of your business lines, finding out what enterprise architecture you might have, what the current use of data and analytics might be across your business lines, and what analytics skills your organization already possesses, or what gaps might need to be filled. The next stage is govern, which is where we're defining the controls, roles, and repeatable processes to make the appropriate data and content available to your corresponding audience that will be needing that information. The deploy stage is where we're really starting to get started and get your foot out the door. Maybe you have some initial dashboards that have been created, the software has of course been installed, and users are starting to get trained on how to use analytics. Plus, there's been some communication channels in place that have been established. And the last part of the Blueprint is those last 2 steps along the way there, which we refer to as evolve. This is where we're monitoring your platform's utilization, measuring your users' engagement, and we're hosting engagement activities, such as today's user group, to promote and support the growing use of data and analytics. What this does is it helps ensure that you're constantly evolving and growing your analytics practices as your institution changes. Now, in practice, again, this is not something that is typically a linear approach going through this, step by step. A lot of the time, you will be, going back to things that you might have missed, or maybe you're already doing some of the more advanced best practices, but are falling short in some other ways. But think of this as just more of a general guideline. With that being said, I do want to start with, what the beginning of the journey would look like for an organization that is about setting a strong vision for analytics. The first step to building a clear vision of success is a unified answer to what am I, the institution, trying to achieve? And that strategy is going to then inform everything that happens after that. For example, in addition to higher education, I have some customers that I work with in state government. And, particularly during the pandemic, their number one and immediate goal was just getting information out about COVID to the general public, right? So that is really, setting what their analytics strategy has to be initially. But now that things are starting to shift, now they're having to reset their analytics strategy to focus on what other things they can be using data for, what internal processes they need to look at, and what else can they do to, continue to be as data-driven as possible. So even if your organization has been using Tableau for some time, the information in this stage is still worth revisiting to see, what other inputs you might need to get from other relevant stakeholders. So once the main project and goals have been established, the second step of the blueprint, this is where it's important to identify the teams of those stakeholders to see, who's going to be involved with this effort. This includes everything from identifying executive sponsors, specific information technology admins, or data architects. And of course, there's a lot of other roles that I'm not covering that the blueprint does, but really just, who all needs to be involved in the process. So after that's been accomplished, you should have a clear vision of what analytics use cases you want, why you're using data in the first place to help, answer some of these questions, and who needs to be involved to help answer those questions and receive the answers to them. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at next is the first of our core capabilities, which is agility. Agility is really focused a lot about making sure that your data environment is growing and moving and changing all the time, and making sure that you have both the hardware, software, and processes put in place to support that growing environment. The more users that you onboard, the more data sources you're connecting to, the more content that's being developed. These are all things that you need to make sure that you're being cognizant of and making sure that you continue to offer your users a performant environment. There are focus areas within the agility capability. And again, typically, when going through the blueprint, that first stop there, which in this case is deployment, is what we consider, really some of the critical pieces of your Tableau deployment, with, the things that you'll start to do throughout the life cycle of using analytics coming in that evolve stage. But within agility, the first step is installing and configuring the software. And what the Tableau Blueprint will give you is a prescriptive guidance on the best way to build, right size, and secure that environment. This gets you started and launched, but of course it doesn't just stop there. It also talks about how to distribute licenses to users, what types of licenses they should have, based off of what capabilities that they need, what other data sources that you're connecting to, really just setting up the foundation of what that framework is going to look like. So with that framework being established, to really start to build agility into your environment, monitoring is key to make sure that it is staying performant. So the monitoring stage of the agility capability covers everything from what types of metrics to be paying attention to, what reports you need to be viewing to making sure that things are performing correctly, what alerts you need to be aware of, really just to make sure that everything is working correctly. And if there is an issue, you have the tool set up and you're checking the right things to make sure that you can identify any potential issues. The last stage, maintenance, this step really helps guide our customers on how to do things to continue to have a performance environment for their users. Some of the specifics that the blueprint will cover are things around load testing, capacity planning, how frequently to do upgrades to Tableau server, things like that that really just make sure that there is consistency for users, and that they're making sure that their environment not only stays performant but is scaling as the organization continues to grow as well. I think that one note as well about load testing, if your organization has any dashboards that are publicly available to users, highly recommend checking out some of the load testing resources. An example that I always like to cite is, let's say that you have on your an external dashboard that you posted on your own server, and it's gets picked up by media attention, and now you have thousands of users all go into it at once. You need to be able to understand what that is going to do to your environment, just so in case something like that happens, which we saw a lot of in the wake of COVID. You understand what the impact is going to be to load times and any other content that is also on your server. So just an example to definitely check out if that is something of interest to you. Okay. So our second capability is proficiency, and this one's relatively straightforward. At the end of the day, it's making sure that your institution can be successful with data and that your users know how to utilize data. It's sometimes referred to as data literacy or analytics skills, but regardless of what you want to call it, there has to be some baseline understanding in the user population of how to see and understand data. Not everyone, of course, needs to be a data rock star that's actually creating their own content, but they need to have different levels of analytics expertise within your organization in order to be, what we referred to earlier as a data person. So what this is going to cover is really just making sure that regardless of if you are creating dashboards or you're just using them to, with your everyday decision making, that you're literate with, your understanding of what you're looking at. The first step in proficiency is building that solid education plan for your users. And the key to this really is making sure that it's designed around specific job roles and how they're expected to use data. So, for example, if you're hiring a new analyst, a lot of the times, they might already have a requirement that they, you already use Tableau or, come from some background of using business intelligence tools. But regardless of that, you should have training materials for them to, learn some of those more advanced techniques and have, a very robust onboarding program. What the Tableau Blueprint offers is some suggestions on what types of training elements you should be incorporating into that training plan to make sure that, there is a path for success that is also, again, scalable as, you continue to hire more people. What is also covered in here is, how to make sure that your other users of data have a training path. And this can be, doing pre-recorded videos about how to navigate the dashboards on your server. But we also have some additional free resources at Tableau, such as our Data Literacy for All initiative. What Data Literacy for All is, it is 6 hours of 100% free content that we put out really to help all levels of data users understand, what they're looking at. And it's not Tableau specific, and it scales up, from things as basic as, qualitative versus quantitative data to the different, types of aggregation methods and so forth. So it does scale up in terms of, what level of information you're putting out there, but definitely check it out after the call today as well, if that is something that's of importance to you. I see Stephanie just put that in the chat box. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so the next step of the proficiency capability is measurement. And this is all about measuring your users' adoption and engagement. Who's using it, who's not, what data sources people are utilizing, what content's being utilized. And this is something that is often missed. And I think it's really important because it allows the owners of your environment to continue to optimize Tableau, and that the data and content that is being utilized continues to meet the needs of the business. Also a great way, depending on how many users that you have, to identify people that should maybe have a bigger voice on your center of excellence for Tableau. So, maybe there's a workbook that is highly utilized that you're not connecting with that creator that frequently. It could be a good way just to kind of bring them into the fold. But this is also just, if one of your goals as an organization is to, maybe increase the amount of people that are using data to make decisions, one thing that you can do here that I would suggest is establishing a baseline of usage over a certain amount of time. When I say usage, I mean the people that are logging in. And then after some of these efforts that you're putting into place from the blueprint, such as community events and so forth, try and set a goal for yourself, whether it's increasing that 20% or whatever it is to you, just to really have that, measurement in plain view. And last but not least on the proficiency track is analytics best practices. And as analytics become more mainstream in your organization, it's important that the best practices be set to help guide the users and how they should be using data. Some of the specific items in the blueprint that is covered within here are things like visual style guides, data dictionaries, dashboard starter templates, really just things that make it not easy only for your creators to design content, but also for, again, the people that are consuming that content to have a similar look and feel so that they can have that enhanced level of data literacy as well. Our last core capability is all about the community. This is my favorite part about the blueprint. It's a large part of what I get to do as a customer success manager. But experience shows that the community is something that really is a critical differentiator between people who succeed with using data and those that do not. Having a thriving internal community is more successful at building data culture, especially because it's going to happen quickly as well. Because of these internal communications that are happening, it's going to help drive your organization's adoption and engagement and excitement for using analytics. So the first part of the community capability is all about internal communications. And I think this is one of the most important things that you can do is having a good place to disseminate information about analytics, but also as a place to direct users to if they have questions. So what the blueprint covers is really two main things here. One is more in the moment communications channels, like a lot of groups have a Slack channel. There's also a higher education specific Slack channel that's open, and last I checked has over 1,500 members, just as a way to get information from other users. But what I recommend to you, if you do not already have one, is to start looking into setting up an enablement intranet. And what that is, whether it's on a public website, like a lot of customers do, especially given the fact that we're in higher education, or if it's just something on an internal intranet page, what an engagement site or enablement intranet site is a place that's going to have your frequently asked questions. It's going to have training materials. It'll have announcements about when the next user group is going to be. Really, your place to go if you have any questions about Tableau or analytics at your institution should be this site. So definitely check that out if it's not something that you already have already. And there's a lot of things that you can do to get one started, and it'll start to build itself over time. So once that communication channel is in place, then we move on to the second stop here, which is engagement. And what the blueprint does is it breaks engagement down into two types. You have external activities like we're participating in today, where you're making use of the broader Tableau community, whether it's the high country user group or the national higher education user group that actually has its first virtual meeting on Thursday this week, actually. I'll put a link to that in the chat later as well. But getting involved with those, but also letting your users get involved with them too. And then the other half is internal activities. So having a user group specific to App State, for example, or having lunch and learns, or doing your own version of the Iron Viz competition, at your organization. I helped run one of those for a school in Texas last year, and it was awesome. It was great to see people getting excited about using analytics specific to their organization. The last step of the community capability is support. And what this means and what it will cover is how to establish strong support environments that allow you to keep your users humming along as seamlessly as possible. If they need help, they know how to get it. It also covers some other things that you can do to help kind of forecast, what areas they might need help with by using things like, like user surveys, just to kind of find out, the pulse of the community. So underpinning all of the capabilities of the blueprint is a deliberate and ongoing conversation around governance. This is obviously, a huge topic into itself, so it's nothing that we'll cover, fully in depth today. But as far as some of the things that the blueprint does cover, Governance is a combination of controls, roles, and repeatable processes that create trust and confidence in data and analytics within your organization. Because it's commonly associated with more maybe traditional BI processes, there is a common misconception that governance runs counter to self-service analytics, which seems to be the direction most organizations are wanting to head towards. However, governance takes on a different yet equally important role in a modern analytics environment where, in fact, it is actually enabling and empowering users rather than simply restricting them. It's a good example that I like to think of is Lime bikes versus city bikes, which if you're not familiar with them, those are just kind of like the bird scooters, or they're just those bikes that you'll see out across your city that you can rent. And it's a really good way to kind of think about governance, because Lime bikes, they have no governance around where you can pick up the bike and where you can drop it off, just like a bird scooter. You just leave it on the sidewalk, tell the app you're done, that's it. It's great for the end user as there's no controls in place with, they have to take it back to a specific place. But it's not great for the next user because, a few bad decisions can cause those bikes to end up in bad places, they're hard to access, and they're not where someone needs them. So on the other hand, city bikes also provide self-service, but in this case, there's a lot more governance because users can get the bikes at any time, but they're from designated pickup and drop-off locations. So you're still allowing people to do things, but there's control involved. So what the blueprint will cover is how to help you define what those controls are going to look like for your organization, so that your users do feel empowered without feeling restricted, but you're still making sure that only the right people are getting the information that they need, and sensitive information is hidden, and so forth. This is something that I would recommend establishing a governance council if you don't already have one, where you're meeting regularly to discuss your governance policy with both stakeholders from IT and from the actual data side, but also the business users as well that are affected by those policies. This is definitely something that I think you need to continue to refer back to as your organization grows. So as I mentioned earlier, the blueprint is designed to help you along your journey towards building a data culture. And each of the dots on the blueprint is supported by detailed prescriptive documentation that explains why this particular area is important, what needs to be done, and how to do it. It's not just a deployment guide with technical guidance, but what the blueprint is a detailed process guidance, and that really just kind of helps you accelerate your efforts. That being said, especially for organizations that have been using Tableau for some time, it can be a little intimidating to jump into. Where do you start? How do you even know what things you might be missing? So for the last part of my presentation today, I want to tell you about the brand new Tableau Blueprint Assessment. So the Tableau Blueprint Assessment, and you may have taken a version of this at Tableau Conference 2019 if you had a chance to attend that, or working with another customer success manager, but we have completely revamped our efforts of the last few months to what we refer to now as Tableau Blueprint Assessment 2.0. And what it is a 100% self-service way for you and your organization to see where you rank with in regards to the Tableau Blueprint and start getting some recommendations about how to improve. This is a 100% free tool, just like the rest of the blueprint, and you can access it directly on Tableau.com. This is what you'll do is, since you'll be logging in just with your Tableau.com username, it will allow you to measure your current state, your organization's commitment to adopt changes to your data culture, and to evolve some best practices just to make sure that you are going to that next level. As mentioned, the Blueprint Assessment is a 100% self-service survey that anyone can take. So by using that Tableau.com login, it will match your responses to your overall organization. But the questions that you personally will be receiving are personalized based off of your organization size, the seniority level of the individual taking it, and what responsibilities an individual has in regards to your Tableau deployment. Capabilities are tactical best practices that you have in support of your Tableau deployment. And these are designed more for mid-level managers, frontline managers, and individual contributors and analysts that are actually getting hands-on with Tableau. The output from capabilities are actionable recommendations that are going to start helping you achieve success with Tableau. For example, if you are in charge of working within the community, and maybe you consider yourself a community leader, which is something that would be discussed on the survey and would help kind of personalize the questions that you'll be receiving, but you don't have a enablement site like I referred to earlier, that's going to be one of the first recommendations that you see as a means to help continue to grow out your community and your overall Tableau deployment. Commitment, these questions are really for any level of seniority, but it also starts to include more executive leadership. And the commitment questions are about what investment your organization has made in analytics, what business value you're receiving from using analytics, and what sponsorship that you have at the organization to commit to growing the impact that analytics has on the institution. Finally, the behaviors and beliefs questions, these are more designed for your organization's leadership. And the results of these questions will measure your data culture, which is going to help us understand, what the primary driver is behind making data decision-driven at your organization. So how do we get started on this? Stephanie just put a link in the chat to tableau.com/blueprint-assessment. And it's very easy to find on our website as well, but all you have to do is just log into tableau.com and go to that link, and you can start taking this as soon as we wrap up today's user group meeting if you'd like. Now, as far as the assessment results that you'll receive, immediately upon completing this, you'll receive recommendations on tableau.com. So you'll start to see, specifically, these are some things that you should be doing. I like this example here for capabilities. It says, follow these recommendations to build your proficiency capabilities. Have a process for peer-to-peer content reviews. Create visual style guides. And what this will do is it'll link you to the appropriate sections of the blueprint to help you start getting started on some of these guides as well. Also, if you have a customer success manager on your account, as more results start to come in at the organization level, your customer success manager will help aggregate those results to kind of give you a more holistic picture. If you do not have a customer success manager, speak with your account executive and they can start to at least kind of steer you in the right direction as well. But regardless of seeing the more holistic state, anyone that takes it will receive these recommendations as soon as they complete it. So I highly recommend taking this when you get a chance. So there we have it. That is the Tableau Blueprint at a pretty high level. But I think this is important just to kind of give you an idea of what this documentation covers, how you can start applying these resources, and especially with the new assessment, how you can start applying these and taking action immediately to really get to that next level of being a data-driven organization. So I think that we have a couple minutes left. So I'm happy to open it up to any questions related to the blueprint, or if you have any other questions, I'm happy to help how I can. But thank you for your time, and looking forward to the rest of today's presentations as well.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate that overview of Blueprint. I know from my perspective, when I was looking at Blueprint, it is kind of overwhelming at first. So it was nice to have somebody explain all those different parts and how they all work together. And especially the addition of the Blueprint assessment, I think is just awesome. I do have a question about that Blueprint assessment. You said that multiple people from an organization can fill it out. Do you ever find that maybe their perspectives are different and then it's kind of hard to come up with an overall strategy just because people's viewpoints are so differing?
That's a great question. I think it's something that there's a fine line between, getting every single person at the institution to take it, but really it's just, going back to the blueprint and that very first stage where you're identifying the different roles and responsibilities of your stakeholders, getting someone from as a diverse perspective as you can amongst those roles is important. Now, as far as, let's say you have 50 analysts and each person takes it and has their different perspective, that's still going to be beneficial because it's going to still kind of rank them on a grid as far as, where those individual responses lies. But I think there'll still be benefit to that individual user based off of the recommendations they can see. And that's definitely something that, if you do have a large group of people taking it, I would recommend, discussing, everyone's results at, an internal meeting or, however you're organized as a group.
Thanks. I had another question. Basically, the getting started phase. I know you said you should identify your executive sponsors and your project teams. Getting executive sponsors, how do you find the executive sponsors that you need? Do you find executives who are, you would consider more savvy, or what's the best way to find the people that can really help push the plan forward?
Yeah, so a lot of the times it's follow the money. Ultimately, find out where the funding for Tableau came from in the first place, and understand, are you hitting those goals? Or if you're trying to use analytics to look at student retention numbers, for example, who kind of greenlit that process, and trying to understand, are they getting what they need, or are there things that that they wish that they could be doing a little bit more with analytics? So that's a great way to find a sponsor for something like that. But it's also looking at within your department or even the institution as a whole, what is the mission statement is, whether it's trying to grow the size of the organization to some point, see who cares about something like that. And then, asking and having a very, point-blank conversation of, how are you using analytics right now, and, to support that particular mission.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Trevor. If anybody has any other questions, I'm sure Trevor will stick around for a little bit, and you can go ahead, feel free to put those in the Q&A or in the chat if you want to talk to him directly. But I think now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass everything over to Larry Blackburn. Larry is the Chief Solutions Officer for Datatelligent, and he is going to talk about building a data strategy, particularly for higher ed and nonprofits. So Larry, go ahead, take it.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Let me get my screen shared. And if you could confirm that you see my screen.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, Stephanie, for the opportunity to talk to your Tableau user group. Hello, everyone. As Stephanie said, I'm the Chief Solution Officer for Datatelligent. And I'll say a little bit more about our company at the end of my talk. We are based in the western suburbs of Chicago. But I was telling Stephanie before the meeting started that my dad grew up in Boone, so I have a little connection to the Boone area, so in Appalachian State. So it was kind of nice to join this group and know that I do have a connection to Boone. So so great to meet with you today. So what I want to talk on is maturing to the data-driven organization. And Trevor, the Tableau Blueprint is great, and I think this will complement how you use the Tableau Blueprint tool as well. And I'm going to be talking at it more from a organization-wide maturity and how you use data and what it means to be data-driven. So first, I'll talk about a framework. We've done a lot of research around what it means to be data-driven and how you can use that in your organization. So we boil down the data analytics maturity to these 4 phases. And I'm going to start on the far right. When we talk about being data-driven, what does that mean? And for us, we think of being data-driven is that you have data-first thinking. And so that means that data is embedded into all of your decision-making processes. And you're always looking at data in order to make those decisions. And then all of your systems and people are working together to make the most efficient and effective use of data, which means that everything needs to be integrated so that you can look across your systems and people. So that's what it means to be data-driven, which is the last step on this model. Well, when we work with organizations, a lot of organizations are on the lower steps and just working to improve their maturity. So the first step on this model is just being data aware. And that's where you're just using manual and you have non-standard reports. You know you have data and you want to use it, but you may be limited in how you can do that efficiently. And because of that, your decisions are rarely driven by data, or it takes a long time to get that data that you need. So that's a data aware. And then one step up is what we call data proficient. And now you're using a standard reporting platform such as Tableau. And this is where Tableau can move you up from the data aware phase to the data proficient phase just by using their tool, because they make it much easier to get access to that data. You may still be limited even at this phase because you're only using it to basically confirm or look back at what your metrics are. You have easier access to data and better visibility, but you may be still limited by the access to data. The next step, and a step away from being data-driven, is what we call data savvy. And here, you are using data to make business decisions. So you're starting to realize that you can and want to use data to help you make those decisions. And you have better access. And again, a tool like Tableau can help you do that. But even at this stage, you may not have your data completely integrated. So you often have inconsistencies in your data, or it's often in silos. So when you can move to data-driven, then again, as I said earlier, when you're data-driven, you've made your data easy to get to, easy to integrate. You have it unified so that you're able to look across all of your sources, and then whatever decisions you need to make, and you can also make those decisions as an organization because you have better access to be data-driven. So that's what we, again, have defined as the 4 phases of a data analytics maturity model. And what we do is that we help organizations move up this maturity model, okay? So I want to pause here and ask where you think you fall on the maturity model. And if you could throw into the chat window which of these stages you think you're at. I'll let you do that now. Okay, I'm getting a mix of A, B, and C. Have one that's data-driven, great. Okay, thank you for that. So now that we've defined what it means to be data-driven, I want to talk about some principles that we have taken from, and this is, we've done some research. We found a great paper written for higher ed, but it also applies to any organization, including nonprofits. And so I'll describe these at a high level, but then I'll also give a little more detail to each of these. So the first principle is that make data analytics transformational and make sure it's tied to your organization's goals. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But secondly, invest what you can. And we know there's been some constraints on finances, especially in the last year. And so we know money and budgets can be tight, but if you can make use of your data and invest a little bit at a time, it's still using data can actually improve your financial performance as well. And then finally, it's important to establish a unified approach and create that unified platform. So I'll talk about each of these next. So the first principle, make data analytics transformational. So some key points here. One, you want to make sure that you're connected to your organization's mission for results that matter to the organization at all levels. So from leadership all the way down to your frontline people. So you want to understand what's important to all of those different levels and make sure that as you think about data analytics, how can it enable your organization's mission? And then secondly, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we have to tailor the approach for data analytics to your mission, culture, your structure, and then where you are in your analytics maturity. And then the third point here, and again, this is a nice complement to what Trevor presented before, you want to develop a blueprint for building that data-driven organization. So we saw where you can use Tableau's blueprint assessment. We also help organizations come up with a blueprint for being a data-driven organization. And when we start engaging with a customer, this is always the first thing we do. So as part of our engagement, before we develop any solutions, we always start with this blueprint. We actually call it a blueprint for customer success. And what's included in our blueprint are these four things. One, we want to understand the critical business strategies and timelines, right? So what are the important strategies, objectives that you may have both short-term and long-term? And then as you think about your calendar of throughout the year where you have to meet certain timelines where data is important, we want to understand that as well so we can meet those needs. The second one then is to think about what is your vision for data analytics. So again, how would you define success? If you had everything that you wanted with data analytics, what would that look like? And what would it do for you? And create that vision for data analytics in your organization. And then we also want to spend some time understanding your current capabilities. How are you doing data analytics today? What tools are you using? What data sources do you use? And what are some of your pain points? We really want to understand what those are so that we're helping you improve that. And so we'll understand those current capabilities. And then out of all that, and this is a discussion that we always have in the beginning, we create that blueprint, and that blueprint is constantly updated throughout our engagement. So we don't just do it once. We are constantly updating it because things change, and things can change quickly, as we saw in the last year. We want to make sure that we are also updating that blueprint and adjusting as needed. Okay. The next principle is to invest what you can. So again, we understand that it's not always easy to take on big projects. You're constrained by time, you're constrained by money, your resources may be limited, but it's still important to make some progress on your data analytics maturity because that can contribute to your organization's success. So we recommend, take a look at using an iterative approach, right? Identify some smaller wins that can return immediate value. Every small step can produce value, so we help you do that, again, through that blueprint process, we understand where some big opportunities are. And then focus on those solutions that bring high value, right? So they can basically pay for itself, right? Once you build a solution that has high value, and then that can produce some ROI, and then that can fund additional work. And then you want to invest in a balance of cost effective and then timely, right? So one of the things we say when we engage with customers is that we want to get quick results because we know that's important and that can help the roadmap maturity to do things quickly, and then also make sure it's cost effective. Okay, so this is where I want to talk a little bit, and I'll talk more about our company at the end, but a little bit of we came up with a new way because we felt like there is a better way to deliver analytics. And so we came up with what's called a subscription-based service. And because of that, because of our approach in a subscription, you get quick time to value. We do get results within the first 90 days. We're flexible. We have that cost-effective and predictable pricing because you're paying just a subscription. And our approach is to be iterative and agile, right? So we're always asking for feedback. We're working very iteratively with our customers. And then we want to make it easy, right? We say that we make data easy to use. So this is a different approach than the typical consulting approach if you're looking for outside help. If you're not, and you've got capabilities inside, you might also consider taking this approach with your internal customers as well, right? Just kind of using that iterative and agile approach. And then finally, we want to talk about establishing a unified approach. So one of the constraints that we've seen across organizations is that both their data and organizations can be siloed and make it difficult to have that collaboration and that unified approach to data. And so we say, let's remove those silos and let's just expect that collaboration needs to happen across the organization. And again, it goes back to the roadmap, right? If we want to accomplish those goals in the blueprint, then we need to figure out how to improve that collaboration. We also want to empower those on the front lines with access to data and tools, so they're not limited, and they can be a part of the process of using data. And then finally, make data a strategic asset, right? And build that unified data platform. So here's a visual, and this is what we, this is our approach on building that data platform, that unified data platform. And what we do when we build this unified data platform is that we look at identify all your data sources that you would want to bring in, both internal and external. We use a database platform called Snowflake, and we bring all that data into a data lake. And just a data lake is a much more agile approach and flexible approach than your traditional data warehouse. And then what we do is that we build data sets, and this is a higher ed example, but we also have examples for nonprofit, where we then build data sets that feed the analytic solutions that can be built on Tableau. And so it's an agile, flexible approach. We use the combination of Snowflake and Tableau to do that. So again, it's important to think about, if you want to look at your analytics across the organization, how can you bring your data into a unified data platform? Then it opens up that access and integration. Finally, I want to talk about our company, and in with that, then I'll see if there's any questions. So as I said, we're Datatelligent. We offer a service called Data Analytics as a Service. So I've been doing data analytics for over 20 years, and I've been on the management side of things. And Even then, I felt like there was a better way to do analytics and buy analytics services. So when we started Datatelligent, we wanted to do something different. And so as a part of your subscription with us, you get these three things. You get a partnership, which we use as subscription-based service. We build that data analytics maturity blueprint or roadmap, and then we develop that customer success plan to make you successful. So that's always there, and we're always updating that maturity roadmap. And then we provide a flexible team of people who have that deep analytics knowledge and full range of services. And then we essentially work as your data analytics team. And then finally, on the platform, as we just talked about the unified data platform, what we do is that we have templates we call solution engines for Tableau or Power BI, data pipelines to Snowflake, and then we also can provide that data analytics operations and help you support your platform. So a little bit about us. If you'd like to know more, if you have any questions about what I talked about, feel free to reach out, and I'll pause there for any questions.
Thanks, Larry. That was very helpful. I especially like that that graph that you had that explained the flow of everything. That was very helpful. I have a question about the removing silos. Sometimes silos are built by just different departments, but then sometimes silos are built because people feel like they own their data. What's your recommendation on, in that situation, how to break down those silos?
Yeah, just make sure I understand your question. So you're talking about people in the silos are the owners of their data, and it's hard to then get access because you have to go through them as the owners?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when we work with organizations, it does help to meet with leadership at the highest level that we can and get that support, right? And then if we start with that roadmap discussion or the blueprint discussion about tying to their business strategies and understanding their critical strategies and problems that they're having currently that data can solve, then we get agreement on how that data can help them solve those organization type of problems at the highest level that we can. And then we start to map out the data. And Stephanie, we've heard most of the customers we talk to, this issue of having data access and having it integrated into one platform, it's a common need, right? So I think everybody seems to agree with that. Like, we need to do this. The bigger question is, how do we do it, right? And so I think it's having that support at the top level helps with that. But then also having those quick wins, right? That start to show how data can be used. And once you open it up, how it can be used for multiple purposes and multiple areas, right? So I think that starts to show the value of having that one view of data across the organization.
Thanks, Larry. And when you're looking at the progression from an organization that's just getting data aware to being data driven, I know you said that's an iterative process, but how long do you think it generally takes for an organization to move in that direction? Does it depend on the organization? Is it like turning a speedboat, or is it more like turning the Titanic? What do you feel the general timing is for that?
Yeah, that's another great question, Stephanie. We get a lot too. Is how long does it take to get there? Because we want to get there, right, as fast as we can. So again, that's why we came up with our approach, which is to try to make it as easy as possible to move forward, right? And so part of it is kind of showing people how easy it can be once we have access to data, how quickly we can build solutions with a tool like Tableau, right? Tableau makes it very easy once you have data to start building solutions, right? So that's one of the values of Tableau. So what we do is that we have we start out with a first phase we call the accelerator, which our goal is within 90 days to build at least one, maybe two solutions that are then have broad impact, right? In higher ed, such as student retention, nonprofits, we're looking at, can we show the key metrics of a nonprofit organization so that they understand where they are quickly. So within 90 days, we try to move them from wherever they are to one level up at least, right? And just being able to have more access to data and have a real solution.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. So yeah, thank you, Larry, again, and thank you again to Trevor for your very helpful presentations on data strategy and data culture. I certainly enjoyed them and I learned a lot, and I appreciate you guys for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Great. And thank you to all our participants for tuning in today. We will have a recording of this meeting on YouTube in a few days, so I will make sure everybody gets a URL for that, which leads me to something that I want to share with you guys. If you have not found us yet, we do. The High Country Tableau Users Group does have a LinkedIn page, and I put the link in the chat. So if you're interested in joining, you just have to go to that link, and then I can approve your membership. And that you'll get some routine, we'll post things periodically, Tableau things or just data, general things. And then we'll also post information about the upcoming meetings. So it's a good way to keep in touch with the group. It's also a good way if you have questions or concerns or you want to share successes with the group, please feel free to use that as well. So that is our main way right now that we have of communicating with each other. Our next meeting will probably be in the October-November timeframe. Still no word from Tableau yet on if it's going to be in person or if we're still going to do virtual. Probably will be virtual, but keep your fingers crossed. Maybe we'll get to do in person fairly soon. I know I'm looking forward to actually meeting people. It's nice to have this technology, but I think it's even better to be able to meet people in person and to network and make connections that way. So stay tuned on that. And also, if you ever have any topic suggestions, things you want to learn more about, please feel free to let me or Jenny know. Or if you want to talk, if you have a great success story that you want to share with the whole group, again, let us know. We're always looking for new speakers to talk. Because Jenny and I don't want to be the ones who speak every single meeting. We want to kind of open it up to everybody. So that's all I got. Thanks again to everybody, and we will see you virtually next time. Thanks. Bye.